everybody, and welcome back to the Blossom Review. How are you? Today we're talking about one of the most popular K-dramas out in the past few months. We are talking about MBC's When the Phone Rings, which received international distribution through Netflix and aired its last episode last Sunday. So, quick disclaimer, this review contains a lot of spoilers. So we're gonna be analyzing the narrative and the character arcs. So if you haven't watched the show and you don't want any spoilers, maybe skip to the end. And then I'm gonna give you a general, should you watch this show, verdict. Alrighty, so When the Phone Rings is actually an adaptation of a web novel of the same name, and it was adapted into a show of 12 episodes. It tells the story of Sa-eon, played by Yeon-seok. He is the youngest presidential spokesperson in the history of Korea, and he is married to Hee-joo, played by Soo-bin. Hee-joo is a mute sign language interpreter, and Sa-eon comes from a very prestigious political family, and Hee-joo's father is the owner of a very powerful and important newspaper in Korea. So this is, of course, an arranged marriage. But unfortunately, Sa-eon and Hee-joo, they live very cold lives at home, so they don't talk to each other at all, pretty much. So their relationship is not going very well, of course, but things start to change when Hee-joo is kidnapped. So that's the premise of the story. When the Phone Rings is full of dramatic and unexpected turns. It is a very well crafted and very well acted makjang romantic mystery. If you don't know what makjang means, I'll give you the definition from Dramabeans because I love it. So makjang is a stylistic, tonal or narrative element in dramas that chooses to play up outrageous storylines to keep viewers hooked despite how ridiculous the stories become. So the script makes use of all kinds of cliches you can imagine. Evil mothers, even more evil grandfathers, kidnappings, murders, families caught in a web of lies and intrigue, and so on. But it works. It works because When the Phone Rings is aware of its grandiose plot points and successfully arranges these plot points in a thrilling sequence of cause and effect. So there is this very important, very famous filmmaker, American-Scottish filmmaker called Alexander McKendrick. I hope you guys have heard of him. And he said something that I think perfectly applies to When the Phone Rings. He said, "Most stories with a strong plot point are built on the tension of cause and effect. Each incident is like a domino that topples forward to collide with the next, in a sequence which holds the audience in a grip of anticipation. So what happens next? Each scene presents a small crisis that, as it is revolved, produces a new uncertainty. After all, drama is expectation mingled with uncertainty." With When the Phone Rings, we are constantly prompted to guess what's coming next. Because since the limits of their universe are different from ours, we wonder how far these characters are willing to go to accomplish their goals, or how they will react to new incidents or to new discoveries. That happens because of world building. So with the exception of the last episode, we'll talk about the last episode later, but with the exception of the last episode, When the Phone Rings excels at world building. That means that they created a universe with its own set of rules and morals. And we, as the audience, we understand that their universe is different somehow to ours. That's why we are compelled to suspend our disbelief and fully engage with the narrative, rooting for the heroes and despising the villains. So 11 out of 12 episodes, they are exceptionally written, and they offer this fast-paced story that blends romance, thriller, mystery, revenge. So it's a very exciting, very thrilling tale. As every action leads to a reaction, and all characters have a very clear purpose in a story, they are constantly faced with the consequences of their own actions, and they are motivated to respond. So they follow this very long, winding road towards their goals, whether the goal is to protect a loved one, to get a divorce, to become the president, or to enact vengeance. So as they are constantly placed in conflict with one another, our characters, they have the opportunity to grow, to improve, and I think especially this applies especially to our two main characters. Sa-eon and Hee-joo have a very solid character arc in the show, thanks to this whole structure of the narrative. Despite its very, very dark tones, the heart of When the Phone Rings is the relationship between Sa-eon and Hee-joo. So you have these two characters who grew up in very, very unhealthy environments, raised by twisted, selfish, awful parents. And that means that they have become adults who are incapable of expressing emotion honestly and who lack self-esteem. So when you place these two people under the same roof, Hee-joo, who can't assert herself, and Sa-eon, who can't communicate honestly, you have two characters who seem to be living, even though they are constantly placed in conflict with each other, they seem to be living isolated, as if on two separate little islands. However, everything changes with a phone call. So the phone in When the Phone Rings is the main motif of the story. It is a constant symbol of the themes that are running throughout this entire narrative. The themes of self-growth, of sincere communication, of discovering one's own identity. So throughout the show, phones bring people together, they review identities, they ignite changes, they relay orders, they represent the characters' voices. At the beginning of the story, Hee-joo is always carrying her phone around because she needs to type her words to the people who who can't use sign language. So in the very beginning, the phone is Hee-joo's voice to the world, part of a personality that she has had to create in order to survive. So initially, Hee-joo is very meek, very naive. Her mother raised her, telling her that she was a nobody whose voice was not important enough to be heard. So she brought Hee-joo up as a woman who was way too timid to voice her own beliefs, her own needs, and her own desires. That's why Hee-joo never confessed her feelings to Sa-eon, even though she had always cared for him, even as kids, teenagers. So after they got married, this initial fondness for Sa-eon changes into hurt, into anger, into further insecurity, because Sa-eon treats her very coldly at home. He always keeps his distance, and she's never, let's say, she's never brave enough to voice her anger and her hurt. So in this marriage to Sa-eon, she's always being a hostage. She feels like she's always being a hostage. She is just a pawn in a game between two families. Once Hee-joo starts using her kidnapper's phone, the phone gives her the opportunity to embrace a new persona, the 406. But 406 is nothing more, nothing less than the Hee-joo that has been suppressed all these years. And now the phone grants her the freedom to express herself in the way that she's always wanted, but never felt she had the right to. After the kidnapping in the first episode, the phone becomes a key out of the prison cell of her marriage. So the phone, or she believes that the phone will allow her to get a divorce and live her own life. Meanwhile, Sa-eon was raised by a kind but restrained man who sends him away to live with the Bakes. Now, with the Bakes, he was never accepted into the family for obvious reasons, and he was raised through contempt, demands, and fake public smiles. So Sa-eon lacks a sense of identity because he has always been trapped in a life that isn't his. So from his perspective, he has never been truly wanted or loved by anyone, and he was never taught to convey emotion with sincerity. As teenagers, Sa-eon and Hee-joo were companions. They were fellow black sheep in their respective families. A few episodes in, and you find out that Sa-eon has always loved Hee-joo, and his idea has always been to help her build a better life for herself. So his marriage to her then frees him from a family that he never belonged to, and also gives him the opportunity to protect and help the only person he's ever identified with. She never needed to know or he thought that she never needed to know his real intentions or his real emotions behind this arranged relationship, because in his perspective, she's just another person who has never wanted or cared about him. Since they are unable to communicate openly, it's the phone calls from 406 that push Sa-eon into facing his own actions, into rediscovering the person he wants to be, and of course into realizing that love and sincerity are intrinsically connected. Eventually, Sa-eon realizes that Hee-joo wants to be loved as much as he does, and then the phone becomes the key to a relationship that he's always dreamed of. The phone calls then send shockwaves through their daily lives, igniting changes in their own personalities and in their relationship, of course. It is the phone that reveals to Sa-eon and Hee-joo the complex layers of their personalities and of their own selves and of their relationship. So thanks to these phone calls, Sa-eon gradually becomes warmer. He gradually becomes more honest. He eventually realizes that Hee-joo not only needs him, but loves him. On the other hand, Hee-joo slowly becomes more assertive. She develops a strong sense of self-respect and self-worth, and she understands that her life is meaningful and that she has every right to use her voice to defend her own ideas, her own beliefs, her own wants, desires, and her needs. The script then focuses on this character arc, and it allows Sa-eon and Hee-joo to develop and arrive in episode 12 as two completely different individuals. Their relationship is then, as they discover the truth about each other's, let's say, real selves and real identities, their relationship is based on sincerity and mutual respect, but it also emphasizes the beauty of kindness, empathy, and forgiveness. Forgiveness is a very important theme in the show as well. Yeon-seok and Soo-bin, they play their characters flawlessly. They offer nuanced performances with this undeniable chemistry that is just unbelievable. Their emotions just resonate loud and clear throughout the entire show, and the love and longing that they feel for each other, that Sa-eon and Hee-joo feel for each other, they become stronger and stronger and stronger with every episode. And it's just, from the very beginning, their scenes together are just spellbinding, because they have this very effortless dynamic between them that you can't stop watching them. They are fantastic in the show. Now, a subplot that I think was handled very, very well is the relationship between Hee-joo and her mother, because throughout the first half, let's say, a little bit more than that, but throughout the first half, you see that their relationship is incredibly unhealthy. But by the end of the show, Hee-joo clearly tells her mother what she believes in. She imposes respect, and I think most importantly, in the last episode, she establishes very, very clear boundaries, which I believe set this possibility of a redemption arc that would happen beyond the last episode. So I think it's realistic that they didn't end the show as BFFs, like, oh my god, everything is fine now, because Hee-joo has been through a lot, and that wouldn't be really okay. So the show ends on a very hopeful note, let's say. So Hee-joo knows how to impose this respect, and she knows how to deal with her mom. She has established these boundaries, and maybe in the future her mom will maybe slowly become a better person. Even better, in my opinion, is the dynamic between Hee-joo and her stepsister Ina. Ina is initially shown as a very dodgy character, and we as the audience, we feel like we can't trust her. I feel so bad about that. But at first we feel like we can't trust her because Hee-joo feels like she can't trust her. But throughout the show, Ina becomes sort of a surprise element. She proves to be a very determined woman who now understands the failings within her own family, and she is ready to fight for what she believes is right. So I think for me, the cherry on top was this fantastic scene in episode 12. This is probably my favorite scene in episode 12. A very genuine and moving scene in which Ina apologizes to Hee-joo. She shows real remorse, and she wants to mend their relationship in the right way. I think this scene is very important because it not only consolidates Ina's character, but it also highlights the progress of Hee-joo as a character. Because you see Hee-joo respond to her sister in a very kind, in a very mature, but most importantly, in a very honest way. And I think this scene is also important because it reflects the theme of forgiveness that you see in the previous episodes. So for me, that scene, it was the scene that saved episode 12. But okay, we'll talk about it in a second. Wait, now let's talk about the rest of the cast. I think the script of When the Phone Rings is full of likable characters. You have a lot of lovely characters in this show. But at the same time, the villains are truly despicable. But the great thing about the villains, or the antagonists in When the Phone Rings, is that their characters go beyond just being bad people. So the real Baek-seon, or let's say the kidnapper, a fantastic performance by Park Jae-young, by the way. You see that, of course, he has clear sociopathic tendencies, but his backstory is developed well enough to establish a character that can stand on his own. So his motives are made clear to the audience, and his actions are justified, let's say. So that creates a well-rounded antagonist that you sort of understand. It's not just this cardboard cutout. The same applies to his mom, the evil Kyujin. And going back to the story of the cause and effect structure, let's say, it is interesting to see how it's the conflicts between these two characters and the conflicts between these two characters and the other characters in the story that ignite and move the plot forward. But you clearly see like this chain of cause and effect throughout the show that leads to their demise. So they design their own demise, which was very interesting. I think the way they put together was very, very interesting to watch. Now guys, forgive my Korean, but the show was directed by Park Sang-woo and Wee Duk-gyu. I'm so sorry if this sounds terrible, but they were fantastic, to be honest. The two directors offered the show meaningful compositions. Their use of color is excellent, and the transitions as well, they are so smooth throughout. The camera work in When the Phone Rings is always motivated by the plot, which was lovely to watch. But they also offered the show, let's say, they also gave the show this visual poetry that was incredible. So for example, the final scene of episode 10 is not only an excellent performance by you, but also the compositions that they use in that scene, they are so meaningful. Or one scene that I've watched a million times, there are others, but this one scene is one that I probably remember forever, is a scene in episode 4 in which Hee-joo needs to interpret this random text that Sa-eon reads to her during a job interview. And that scene is fantastic. So the script is great in that scene because Sa-eon's line summarizes the entire show pretty much. And it proposes to the characters the question that the show proposes to the audience. So if Sa-eon and Hee-joo make an effort now, could they live like any other ordinary couple? But the directors managed to translate that scene into screen with mastery. They place these two characters in this very symbolic scene that visually conveys the poignant and the longing nature of Sa-eon and Hee-joo's relationship. It is fantastic to watch. And well, the direction in this show is incredible, cinematography as well, so the director of photography, amazing, really. Another thing that I love about When the Phone Rings was the importance that they placed on sign language. Sign language is vital for Hee-joo because at first it is the only language through which she can express herself honestly. And you see that besides the phone, it's only after Sa-eon starts learning sign language that they are able to communicate more honestly with each other. So sign language is another aspect of the show that brings these two characters together. And I think it reinforces their connection, but it also symbolizes Hee-joo's personality a little bit. So I find it amazing that at the end, Hee-joo embraces this side of her personality. She embraces sign language as an important side of herself. And she's proud to continue building her career as a sign language interpreter. I think a quick note that I need to make here is that Soo-bin, she won the Excellence Award at the 2024 NBC Drama Awards, and she delivered part of her speech in sign language. So I thought that was incredible. What a little queen she is. So I'll leave the link in the description if you guys want to watch it. She's adorable. So let's talk about the bad things. The last episode. The last episode is the weak link in the show. It was fairly disappointing because even though it does tie up all the narrative threads in a very satisfying way, it spends most of its time focused on this argan subplot that not only fails to make any sort of sense within the context of the show, but it also completely disregards Sa-eon's character arc. Even though the argan sequence is present in the novel, this storyline is set up in a completely different way that allows it to work within the novel's narrative. In the show, however, this storyline is presented in the most ridiculous way. So Hee-joo is given 2 clues to Sa-eon's whereabouts. Apparently, these clues were set up by Sa-eon himself, who wanted to hide. And then a very well-dressed Hee-joo flies to Argan, sets off through the jungle towards a rebel-occupied zone in what seems to be an awful war, to be taken hostage again, and then saved by a Rambo-like Sa-eon, who is hiding in a house behind the bushes, but next to a beautiful beach. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. This sequence seems to come from nowhere, both visually and narratively, creating this jarring contrast with the rest of the show. So while it does demonstrate Hee-joo's progress, that she's now a woman who can chase after what she wants, it forces Sa-eon to do 2 things that he shouldn't be doing. So first, it forces him to place Hee-joo in a position of danger when he's always wanted to protect her. And technically speaking, that's why he disappeared, because, you know, of everything that he's done to her, but okay. And number 2, it forces Sa-eon to break the honest communication line that they had established between the 2 of them. Because by the 11th episode, Sa-eon had already learned the importance of honest and sincere communication. So why is he doing this now? So no. But the final 15 minutes in the episode, they are the happy ending that we were all expecting. So they show Hee-joo and now Yoo-yeon's new married life in shocking contrast with their old life. So if you compare the first and the last episode, it's amazing to see how much things have changed. Well, I'm talking about these 2 characters, not about the narrative. But it's amazing to see how far they've come and how much they've changed. So for example, even the production design is completely different. Their new home is warm, is colorful, is full of natural light, as opposed to their old apartment that was cold and monotone and dark. So it's beautiful to see them smiling, joking, and working on a healthy relationship that they are both openly invested in. I think the best part, in a way, is that the phone motif is that the phone motif comes back at the end of the show to pretty much in the last scene, or almost the last scene, but it comes back at the end of the show to wrap it all up, let's say. So through the phone, they recognize that they need to let's say the honest and confident personalities that they embrace over the phone, they need to be carried over to face-to-face communication. And it emphasizes once again this very heartfelt progression of these 2 characters. Now, I need to mention one thing that I really wish I didn't have to. I'm really sad that the strengths and weaknesses of When the Phone Rings as a piece of television drama have been overshadowed by the incongruous and polemic scene in the newsroom in episode 12, in which anchorwoman Na, Yuri, she announces Yoo-yeon's work as a hostage negotiator in the Ismail-Paltima conflict. It seems that Netflix chose not to translate the chyron. Guys, if you don't know what chyron is the text that appears on your screen during news reports, okay? It appears that Netflix chose not to translate the chyron, and that would have clarified things a little bit. I'll also leave a link in the description if you guys want to read more about that. Apparently the translation changes as well depending on the language that you choose or that you use. But regardless of the situation with the translation, I still find it to be incredibly insensitive to use such an awful ongoing conflict as part of a show that is anything but realistic. So why are you using this here? Imagine if they had said, for example, South North Korea instead. Can you imagine the backlash and the offense that would have caused? I mean, I don't see what the writers or the show or the narrative or the producers or MBC has to gain from this scene. They could have used Argan instead. They could have introduced Yoo-yeon's job in a million different ways without involving such a delicate topic, such a tragedy that has nothing to do with MBC, with the show, and something that causes hurt and pain to so many people. So the episode in general was very disappointing, but I think this point was, yeah, it was heartbreaking. So should you watch When the Phone Rings? Now, even though When the Phone Rings fails to deliver a decent finale, or let's say a finale that lives up to the show's potential, it is still a well executed and well acted makjang that offers a lovely story about personal growth, self-respect, empathy, and forgiveness. It offers this very, very compelling set of characters, a riveting plot. So if you are a realistic sort of person that doesn't really like makjang, this might be a little bit too much for you. So it might be a little bit too much of a stretch, let's say, for you. If you allow yourself to be placed in a completely different universe for a while, I think you'll be in for a very compelling ride. In the end, When the Phone Rings presents the thrill of the unexpected, embracing the extravagant cliches of its genre and presenting them in a peculiar, nuanced, and incredibly addictive manner. So When the Phone Rings is on Netflix. Quick reminder that this review is on the Blossom Review, so we posted it yesterday in article format. And tomorrow we'll be posting a new article on Japanese literature, so we'll be talking about 10 Japanese books that we are looking forward to reading in the next 6 months, so new releases of the next 6 months. And well, I hope guys that you enjoy the video. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to leave a comment, tell me what you thought of the show, your opinions, your ideas, and I will see you next Thursday. So take care of yourself, have a wonderful day, have a marvelous weekend. Thank you so much, and well, I hope you like, subscribe so we can see each other every week. Have a lovely day. Bye, thank you.